Okay, so welcome everyone to the executive committee meeting today. You all know Danielle. I want to introduce you to our new staff, Esteban Cano. He's a senior financial analyst based in the Los Angeles office, and he's here. He's going to be helping us take notes, but he's going to do housekeeping today.
Nice to meet you, everyone. Sure. Welcome to the committee members, liaisons, and members of the public to the Legal Services Trust Fund Commission Executive Committee meeting. Thank you for joining us. We will begin in a couple minutes. We are using Zoom with the goal to foster a more inclusive environment and effective meeting. If you would like to comment during the meeting, please use the raise hand feature. To use the raise hand feature by phone, dial *9 on your phone dial pad to raise your hand, and do the same to lower your hand. Please utilize this tool to virtually indicate that you would like to speak in order to help the chair facilitate the discussion. Now going forward, all LSTFC and committee meetings will be recorded and posted to the State Bar website. After a reminder, this is a video conference, and to please be aware of your surroundings behind you. Now some troubleshooting tips. For those using Zoom on a computer, when on mute, holding down the space bar will temporarily unmute. If you use your phone to dial into this meeting, please be sure your computer's microphone is on mute to avoid audio feedback issues. While joining audio via computer, it is highly recommended if an individual loses audio, they can call in separately using the Zoom conference number. That's it.
Great. Chris, would
Great.
you like me to do roll call?
Yes, I was just going to say thanks, Esteban. Nice to meet you, and welcome aboard here. Appreciate your efforts. Go for it. Go on.
Schreiber?
Here.
Al-Saraf?
Here.
Connolly?
Here.
We have quorum. Let me do our liaisons. Selena, I saw you.
Present.
Bonnie, are you there? I don't see Bonnie. Okay. And then Danielle's on.
Here.
And then Brady, I think it was going to be calling in a bit. So we have everyone. Turn it back over to you, Chris.
I think we have a pretty short agenda for the day, so I think there's no reason we can't move somewhat quickly, but first items are just our, well, first of all, whether there's any member of the public that wants to make a comment right now.
No, whoever that mystery person is dropped off.
All right, we'll pour one out for the mystery person. All right, consent calendar. We got two meeting summary and action items to approve. And can we do these both at the same time?
You can do them at the same time.
Yeah. Does anybody have any comments on them before we vote?
And they're the new templates. I don't know if you noticed that, like the numbering is a little bit different. I think I had mentioned at the last XCOM, the State Bar is adopting a new template. So the numbering, but then substantively, we're moving towards like shorter action summaries. So Chris and I are doing the approach of a little bit longer. So this version is actually a little bit longer than what the Board of Trustees does. But so that, some of our stuff is just easier to go back and do the recording. So we did a modified version, but that's why the length is not as lengthy as what you're familiar with.
Yeah, so I'll move that we approve these two items on the consent calendar. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I'll do
All right.
Schreiber?
Yes.
Al-Saraf?
Yes.
Connolly?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, great. So on to the business for today's meeting. The first was just to review the meeting dates for 2023.
So let me share my screen because we did this over email, but I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. So these are the dates that I had proposed, and then we had one modification based on Chris's schedule. So just want to make sure these 5 meeting dates work for you all. They're all Friday dates for the commission, and then the December meeting is a Wednesday meeting.
Selena.
I'm just noting Friday, March 24th is now a meeting of the California Access to Justice Commission, which will be a conflict for a couple commissioners perhaps who serve on both commissions. But they literally just moved it to on because they had previously had it on Cesar Chavez's birthday, and when I pointed out that was a court holiday, they just moved it today.
Okay. So I don't know, Chris, Erica, I mean, if that makes, there's actually the March meeting is the one meeting that like, there's not like a flurry of business items. So if you wanted to move it, we probably could move it like a week ahead, back.
Who would
Or
it be?
let it stay.
Who would it be conflicts for? I'm just curious. I assume is it
Me,
Catherine?
Catherine, Jim,
Jaskell.
Judge Jessica's not on anymore.
Oh, okay.
I believe that might be it.
Yeah. Mike, go ahead.
Chairs.
Danielle. What's that?
Oh, I was just saying like Catherine's a chair and I think Jim is also a chair of a committee, right?
If you said go ahead, Danielle, it was about a different date. So please
Oh.
finish that discussion.
Yeah, I guess my inclination, Selena, do you know how long those meetings are for Access Commission? Is it 2 hours?
I'm looking right now. I believe it's 12 to 2. It's 12 to 2. So it's just 12 to 2.
I guess I'm inclined to leave it unless there's objection. Danielle, another date?
You all may have looked at this already, but November 11th would be Veterans Day. And so I don't know if the 5th, or I'm sorry, the 10th is a holiday or if the holiday would fall on the following Monday.
I think it's a court holiday.
On
The
the 10th?
On the
The 10th?
10th.
I'll double check, but I'm pretty sure
Oh.
it's a court holiday.
You know, we pulled it, but that was probably our error because we have this big admin calendar where we put in all the dates, but I wonder if we just missed that one. So the 10th is, you said is Veterans Day, Danielle?
November 11th, I believe, would be Veterans Day.
Which is
So then it's
Saturday?
probably, which is a Saturday. So then it would
that's what I
probably
see.
be,
So we'll observe it on the Friday.
that would be my suspicion, but I haven't verified that. I was trying to see if the state bar had its 2023 calendar posted yet.
I'm verifying it. The courts are closed on November 10th.
Oh, okay, so we can't do that date.
Yeah. And the week earlier on the 3rd?
So this meeting is tight for us because between August and November, there's a lot that needs to happen. It's to review our budgets, and that time frame is it cuts down in staff time a week. But then we can't move it the week after because the board usually actually like it the 1 week after because it's right the week before Thanksgiving gives us the maximum amount of time to do budget review, and that following Friday doesn't work. But November.
You do it on Thursday, since the Friday is
We
a
could do-
holiday.
We could do Thursday. How about Thursday? Does that work?
Yeah, let's do Thursday the 9th.
And I assume your team did this, Dawn, but did you check all the Jewish holidays?
So
Yeah.
that's, we don't do, unless somebody brings it up, it just, for us, it feels like then we should be checking everybody, like, you know?
Yeah.
We usually do the court ones, like the court calendar.
So
So,
I know like the high holiday, like so Rosh Hashanah is in September,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so that's not going to be an issue.
Okay.
And then Yom Kippur is in
But I-
early October.
but we don't feel
Yeah.
comfortable doing one if it's not court. We usually use the court because then if you do that, but then you don't do, say, Lunar New Year, I mean, you know.
Yeah, but to your point though, Selena, like none of these run into the high holidays at least.
We, at least for our board, when we have meetings, there's usually enough board members who can't make it for the high holidays that we end up changing meetings. So we try to plan around that because so many people will miss it.
Yeah. So and the other thing I should say about this is, XCOM does the first pass to make sure you all are available. And then when I send it out to the commission and then we get back RSVPs, if we don't make quorum, then we have to change it. Because we've done it both ways where we try to pool the commissioners and it's too many meetings and then do a dual pool. And so we do it this way. And I think that's generally worked.
Yeah.
And then you have not seen these executive committees. So you're seeing these dates for the first time. And I can move any of these dates. I basically did 2 or 3 weeks before like a commission meeting.
Yeah, I think the executive committee can be a lot more nimble. I mean, we basically can adjust a little bit more on the fly as long as we're posting agendas 10 days out. So
Exactly.
I'm less concerned about those, but I think the rest of them should work fine. Or the rest of the executive
Okay.
committee meetings.
The exact, okay. How about you, Erica? I mean,
Yeah, I have no major litigation or travel plans. So as of right now, these look fine.
and again, like Chris is saying, because there's only like the three of you and then me. If we're approaching March and somebody has a conflict, then we can always move it. It's not a big
Well,
deal.
and the thing is, like, usually what happens is I put these in my calendar and then I schedule around them. So
Yeah.
it's
And
fine.
well, this is why we tried to do this before that November commission meeting. And I'm actually, now that I have your sign off, what I might do is just send this out before, not wait till the 16th. So people have in their calendars and they can let me know if like they can't make a commission meeting, and then we can readjust.
So I have a trial date now set for February 27th, and if it goes, I'll probably be in trial by March 7th. So just a heads up. I don't know that it's actually going to go, but it's a hard date.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sort of in the same boat because I have all these individual arbitrations scheduled throughout 2023. So I'm with you. I mean, I think it's probably best just for us to try to adjust as our calendars crystallize closer to the dates.
Okay, sounds good. And the only is we have that 10-day posting deadline.
Yeah.
So I think as long as we could do it a few weeks out, then it's pretty easy on the executive committee to reschedule. Okay, so does this look good then? I'm gonna get this out to the team to get out to the commission. Let me stop sharing then. Great.
Do we need to vote on that?
We don't need to vote.
Yeah, okay. Okay, great, thank you. Okay, Care Court update next on the hit parade.
Yes, so an update is, since the last time the executive committee met, Chris and I had a conversation with the governor's office to get a little bit more guidance. And Chris, please chime in if my notes and my memory isn't accurate. That we've been told that they want us to, the commission and the state bar, to kind of help facilitate the implementation and the planning of the legal aid that's supposed to start October of 2023. So right now, what's in the Care Court statute is that there's a cohort 1 that's being rolled out, 7 counties that represent about 25% of the population. That's the legal services for those 7 counties is supposed to start October of next year. The Trust Fund Commission is getting about $250,000 to distribute in what we're calling as planning rounds to our programs to help them plan for that, like that launch in October. Part of the unknown is when you read the act, it says that the money is only supposed to go to QSVs and support centers. It doesn't carve out any administrative funds for the state bar and the judicial council. So when Chris and I spoke to the governor's office, they said that was kind of a technical mistake, that they had always intended for the state bar and the judicial council to have admin money, and but the desire is that they wanted the commission and state bar staff and judicial council staff to really like engage in the process. So a little bit different than our usual kind of grant making, in that, usually we get a clear directive and then we execute kind of that plan and that vision. In this instance, they want us to engage with the process to help shape the implementation and create they have an overarching vision, but to really like work with the legal aid providers to help kind of craft how it is that legal services are going to be provided for these individuals that are going to be the subject of Care Court petitions. So it's going to be, it's again, a different like role for, I think, state bar staff and the commission. This measure, I think, as we shared before, is very controversial within the legal aid community. And then one other kind of update since then is that last week, the state bar and the judicial council, we had a meeting where we invited all the providers in those 7 counties, and there are about 20 of them, plus the support centers, to have an initial conversation. And this is to share kind of everything that we know kind of thus far. And then to talk about kind of the planning grants, and then to give them just kind of a rough sense, with the big caveat that this is all subject to the commission approval. And we needed also a sense of how many kind of programs are interested in like opting into the planning grants, so that it would help kind of shape what the planning grants are going to look like. So we had it was very well attended. Selena was there, and Zach from LAC, Bonnie, Melanie, the entire judicial council team were there, and then various state bar staff. So we had about 50 participants from about 20 organizations, and we did an informal poll at the end to see, how many organizations are interested. And of those 20, about half of them said they were interested in engaging in the planning grant process. So not necessarily that they would their program would commit to them providing services, but they wanted to have a voice in it and to help shape things. So I think it from our perspective, it went well, because Judicial Council and Selena, we've been hearing a lot from the legal aid program, and also through Selena, that again, it was pretty much unanimous opposition or something very close to that. So we actually didn't know how many people would be how many programs would be so anti this funding stream and this whole new kind of civil court process that they wouldn't want to engage. But I think now that it's happening, people want to participate, right? And so to help, so that it's, they want to avert a catastrophe for, I think, people that would be the subject of these petitions. The one piece of it, and I think I mentioned last time, that is, in the legislation, it says that if the legal aid can't provide kind of the legal services, then it'll go to the public defender's office. So the other thinking, I think, on behalf of that, the legal aid community was thinking that they definitely want to effectuate the process, because they don't want people that have done nothing wrong to feel kind of criminalized. And if legal aid kind of turns its back and is like, we're not providing services at all, then it'll go automatically to the public defender's office. And that didn't feel like kind of the best process for this particular community. So the sense I got that people expressed during that meeting, and also afterwards an email to me, is that though they're still very opposed to it, they want to try to make kind of the best of the situation. And I think that is at least the state bar kind of stance, is that we know this isn't ideal, but we're doing all we can to make it as successful as possible. So that's the update. Chris, I don't know if that kind of captured everything.
Yeah, I guess I would say you have been, your recitation was diplomatic. And that the governor's office is very committed to the idea, and has sort of acknowledged that the details are really still to be worked out. And I guess, looking at that on the bright side, we could say there's an opportunity to shape what is a large public policy initiative. And so that's going to be sort of our role here. It's not one that we're really accustomed to. I think we really do need to sort of operate as a commission here, under the principles of do no harm, or first do no harm, and then make sure that we're adding value where we can. So, Selena, go ahead.
Sorry, we have not had rain in so long, I forgot about muddy dogs. So I apologize for the background. Yeah, I think we're going to hear such conflicting stories from our community. So I felt like the Trust Fund Commission, especially Executive Committee, should just be aware that we're going to hear a lot of stuff, because Dwan is accurate that everyone at that meeting was expressing concern about public defenders making it seem more criminalized. But in other meetings we had, many legal aid programs said we would rather the public defenders do it, because they already maybe doing similar work in our county. So each program is really informed by what's going on in their own county. And there's differing levels of trust with the public defenders. So I'm just flagging that this is going to continue to be like a lot of different messages that seem to be in complete conflict with each other.
Amin?
I guess my question is, who are the stakeholders that are going to be involved in shaping this? Because it sounds to me like they're entrusting us as one of them, as the commission, with the QLSPs or support centers who are involved. Are there going to be folks from the governor's office that are going to remain involved? Like, who are kind of the people that are going to be?
So the agency that's responsible for the implementation is the California Health and Human Services Agency Department, which we've already been in contact with and have had a call, and we're having follow-up calls with them. And they actually want to be informed and provide us feedback along the way as the commission kind of makes determinations. But they're the agency, and what they're planning to do is starting January, have quarterly calls with various stakeholders. So one will be legal services providers, which, you know, they are familiar with the LAC and they're familiar now with the State Bar and the Trust Fund Commission. Who they're actually going to select, I'm not really sure, but I've been asking, at least if we're don't have a seat ourselves, can we be invited to those meetings and listen in, if not be actively involved. The courts is another key player, because the court has a huge role, right? They're the ones right now that are working to create this completely new civil process, working on forms, working on, like, they need to do kind of big education campaign and rollout to their judicial staff, the officers on the bench. They're figuring out all of, like, the nitty gritty, the county, because like Selena said, a lot of this is going to be jurisdiction by jurisdiction, but a lot of the money is going to flow to the county to then provide for the wraparound services. How that's actually going to be done, I think, is an unknown now, and it probably will be dependent on jurisdiction to jurisdiction. So there are a lot of key players. And then the governor's office, what I've been told is they have a vision, and now they're like turning it over to the Department of Health and Human Services to kind of work out all the details. I think they will stay involved somewhat, but my understanding is not like actively how they had been at the higher level.
So Erica, before you ask your question, one thing I would just add to that answer is that I think that the governor's office, when we met with the governor's office, was not totally clear about what the commission did. And so, you know, I think the governor's office believed that we were a safe place to liaise with the legal services community that they hope is going to be involved in the delivery of these services, and that we were an appropriate steward of funds. But I think they didn't totally appreciate sort of what role the commissioners had and the State Bar had, staff, in sort of working on the commission and giving away money, you know, that's passing through the commission in trust or through competitive grant making. So I think that education process took place. And now, as Juan said, HHS is kind of taking the reins up on the, you know, more of the nuts and bolts and less of the vision. So go ahead, Erica.
Thanks. First off, I just have to say I'm amused by the kind of Silicon Valley approach to the CARES Court. Like, we'll just launch it and then kind of see how we'll fix it on the fly. It's always good when you're dealing with like incarceration and people. The thing I guess my question is, like, so are you envisioning that we would have sort of a working group or a committee that the commission?
That's what I wanted to talk to you about, because there are the one time sensitive thing is to get these planning grants out the door. I mean, we want to get them out the door as quickly as possible, because that October date is like ticking, right? So if we can get money into the programs, then they can start engaging in the process and planning. The other thing is, we don't have a contract with the Judicial Council for that $250,000. I mean, we actually don't have the contracts with the Judicial Council finalized for any of our grants, but that's kind of typical for this time period. This is what like usually Bonnie and I work on and try to getting out for the remaining of the year, but that hasn't even been like started. So we're, and then there's this admin piece, right? We don't know if we're getting admin. If we don't get admin, then we'll distribute it at 250,000. If there's admin, then we got to deduct the admin. So we're having a call with the governor's office this Friday to figure out the admin piece. I think once we know the admin piece, I think we need to like move like ahead and try to get these funds distributed. I would say January or sometime very close to January, because we wait till March and February, March, that doesn't give a lot of time, because that then only gives like 7 months. So ultimately, we actually would have the money out now. We can't, right? We have a process. So I'm hoping by January, but then they're not going to be, well, and I should say the staff recommendation is that these will not be competitive grants. We're hoping to model it after, and I mean, you might remember this, the bank grants distributed planning grants in 2017 in anticipation of like distributing the bulk of the bank grant. And so at that time, we did a set amount. People either opt in or opt out. It was very clear, like you sign a form saying that, you know, you verify that you'll participate in X amount of meetings. It was a very low bar, but it really giving them freedom and then getting the money to them. And at the end of the grant period, they would do an expenditures report to confirm that they spent the money the way that they should be. But it wouldn't be competitive. It wouldn't really be an application. It would be an opt-in form. So we're hoping that the commission is amenable to that, because that would be the easiest, the quickest way to get out there. With that said, though, it still requires us, the state bar staff, to get that form built out, drafted on our grants making database, Smart Simple. We're running to the holidays, execute grant agreements. It's still quite a bit of work. It's just not like a, you know, impossible amount of work like it is the competitive. So that would be our recommendation. And then the commission would then decide, and maybe hopefully the executive committee, we can have a proposal by the commission's meeting. If there's some oversight, or if we had questions, like, then where would we go to? Would it be executive committee? Would you want to delegate that? I'm not sure. But I imagine the way the commission, I've seen that they do want some still probably somewhat of an oversight role in that. It's 250,000. So that's one piece that's time sensitive. Another piece that's like a huge kind of wrinkle in this is that implementation is supposed to happen October 2023 for those 7 counties, but we won't know next year's budget until June. And so if we wait until June, we will not have time to get money into the hands of the organizations that are doing the work in October. It just is an impossibility. The way our process is it takes between 4 months and 6 months to get money out the door. And then programs need time to hire. So if we wait until next June or July, there's not enough time. So what we're planning on saying in very clear terms, both to the Department of Health and Human Services and the governor's office, is that if you want legal aid actually to be funded through the Legal Services Commission, we understand the state budget won't happen in June. We need an assurance from you all, a ballpark a number and an assurance of what the money is, and then we can work backwards from there. And they've done that before with us, and the state bar is comfortable with executing grant agreements, and we'll put a clause in the grant agreement. Brady helps us draft saying, in the event that we don't get the funds, then we're not obligated to pay you. But we've done that with HP. So even before we even have a contract with the Judicial Council, or even before it's in the state budget, I think that's the only way we can go around it. But that was I think nobody really thought about the grants administration piece of it, but that is a huge wrinkle, because we just can't do it by the time we found out in June for an October. I think we would need to do those larger competitive grants early spring. And then the question is then, do you want a committee to do that, or how do you want to go about doing that?
So, okay, so a couple of things. One, I want to sort of readdress Erica's question. At least offer my thoughts on it. I think given the stakes, the political stakes and the future monetary stakes here, the commission definitely wants to have a role on an ongoing basis. And so I would suggest to you and Amin that, we should have probably a full committee of the commission that is assigned to this.
Yeah,
even if it sort of lies fallow while some of this stuff works itself out, I think having people kind of keep up on the issues so that they can drop in at speed is important, especially given the thought partnership is probably going to be the laboring one might fall to the bar in terms of like the grants administration piece. So
Yeah.
in terms of the planning grants, just to echo what Juan said, it became clear after that meeting with the governor that, you know, this is just like to get people off the ground. I think I'm comfortable anyway, letting State Bar staff just deploy that in the way that they did it before with the bank grants. It's low dollar value, and it's really just to allow, basically to allow organizations to sort of start working out how they might participate in the CARES Court. So it feels less high stakes, you know, it's just gonna, it's more of an administrative deployment than anything. So that'd be my recommendation. I agree with John's staff take.
So the idea would be like not worry about a committee for the planning grants, let staff kind of create the form and then just sort of make reports to the commission in the ensuing meetings.
Yeah, although I think in the next meeting, we should establish, the commission should establish a committee.
Okay, I see.
And start building out the committee.
But more
you
with the
know,
focus of the longer term
yeah,
grants administration and the planning one, just kind of defer to staff on that with more just reporting to us, not full approval requirement kind of
And
thing.
if there is, if we can get a committee together, then what we can do with the planning grants is still like have a publicly noticed meeting and report back so that the committee members are kept in the loop on what's happening. We can report back, you know, how many applications. I think it's going to be fast moving, probably right after the holidays. And so then they can be looped in. So I don't know when you would envision having it take effect or how you want to select the committee. But it would be great to have, you know, as much details in our proposal to the commission in November.
Yeah.
I think that would help everyone.
yeah. I mean, I think there will be sufficient interest in among commissioners
Okay.
for the committee. So I guess I'm a little bit less worried about that.
Okay.
I would say we want to establish it even at the next meeting.
Yeah.
To like begin convening as necessary in 2023, you know, pursuant to Bagley-Keene and the Brown Act or whatever, but not with any calendar item sort of set up. And I think for Erica and Amin, I don't know if you have like a, you know, ideas or opinions about how big the committee should be or anything like that, but
Yeah, obviously we can see what the interest is. I tend to think smaller is a little bit better, at least initially. But I don't know. But I also don't want you, Dawn, not to have quorum. So what's your thought on that?
To me, it's not always numbers. Some of our larger committees ends up being like half the committee that's available and engaged. So it's not the size to me. It's like who's going to be on there that can be available and can like help staff and brainstorm with us. And because this will be fast moving and require like policy decisions versus like a grants administrative kind of decisions. To me, it's a little.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like I'm assuming the expectation is, would you want like at least one or two members of the committee to go to these like quarterly meetings with like staff, or would staff be doing that? Like we should maybe define like what the time commitment would be.
You know, it's really hard to say because I don't even know the format of these quarterly meetings.
I see.
You know, like the call that Chris with the governor's office, it was helpful to have Chris there, right? So I'm not describing it, so he could see like firsthand kind of like the expectations and dynamics. I mean, that's really cool.
I would say it will suck up whatever time you're willing to give to it. And I would not say it's going to be.
I'm not volunteering necessarily for it.
Yeah, it's not going to be a small commitment.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sort of expecting that I will volunteer for it. And, you know, I guess like we'll see how it shakes out, but there are a lot of details. And I think less familiarity with the legal services community than would be optimal in terms of how they're planning to deploy legal services lawyers in service of the, the clients who are, brought into the care court. So,
Yeah.
I mean, frankly, Selena is gonna be is gonna be there, or someone from that sort of, that could at least like liaise with a broader group. I don't know. I mean, go ahead, Selena.
Well, I have a related question, and I'm going to acknowledge I have a lot of discomfort with this because our community was so opposed for so long that it's hard to shift into, what many of us are calling kind of harm reduction or harm minimalization for the individual person who's involved. But because I know a lot of organizations are still challenging this. But one of my questions is for this, the subcommittee of the Trust Fund Commission, will they need to figure out what deliverables, or is that what outcomes to be measured, or is that going to be judicial council? Like, because I feel like you may want different people on your committee if you need to come up with outcomes versus.
We do it in conjunction with judicial council. So there's a piece of the legislation that asks about like reporting requirements, but it's very broad. I mean, my impression from both the governor's office and the legislature is that they have liked our data. I mean, because we collect a lot of data, right? So they are deferring to us because it's not federal funding, right? So that's different. Federal funding have like very specific, but because this doesn't have those like strict kind of reporting requirements, the way I read it is that they're going to rely on the commission to determine what are like the measurable outcomes. But in the reality, what happens is that the state bar staff and the judicial council staff work up a recommendation and then bring it to the commission. I mean, and then Jim is usually involved with us a lot because he's been involved with all our data stuff, and that's been really helpful. I do think that we should kind of diversify if there is other commissioners that have like an interest and expertise in that. Then that would be helpful. So it doesn't always just fall on Jim to do, because he goes to all of our meetings with judicial council, and we meet at one point like once or twice a week as we're inching to like do finalize the report. They're in now, judicial council has them, so now we're like doing bi-weekly meetings, but it's a lot of work. And there used to, I don't know if Chris, you remember, but there used to be a committee that was just like, I can't remember what it's called now, it was before my time, around all the main economics data, like evaluation stuff, and then that phased off.
Well, yeah, well, Selena, let me try to get back to your question on this. So I think the role of the commission is very uncertain at this point. So part of what I think the commission's subcommittee or committee would need to do is actually ensure that we're doing what we're like statutorily charged with doing as a broad proposition, and then a specific proposition as to the care court. And it seems to me like the reason why we want somebody there, we want a committee sort of formed here, is to ensure that we aren't being assigned with things that we can't do, and that we are also adding helpful expertise to people who are charged with actually implementing. So HHS, the governor's office, and I share your reticence for lots of reasons. One of which I think is that the organizations are being asked to participate in what may not be legal services in a way that like they are currently understood or used. And I think the part of like this process is going to be just explaining some limitations here. So the harm reduction thing is, I think, a key. I mean, I'm talking purely as a protective measure for the commission, which I think is our role. We don't want I don't want the commission under sort of our watch to be compromised in a way that is harmful. So I'm trying to protect the commission, and then I'm trying to add expertise in our knowledge of the substantive legal area through your community of nonprofit or legal services providers, excuse me, and try to make this as successful as it can be, given those limitations.
One other thing I forgot to mention is that the governor's office has asked the State Bar to work with the Judicial Council to come up with a cost projection of how much is this legal services component going to cost, right? LAC put out a figure last year when they were asked to from the governor's office of $50 million. So, Bonnie and I have been working to see if that should we modify that $50 million. So during that meeting that we had with providers last week, and we got really preliminary. That 50 million might be a little bit of an underestimation. So we're going to go back and talk to some service advisors and see like if we have some hard data to do a slightly modified version of that. But what Bonnie and I think that maybe for the cost projection, we're going to keep it to the legal representation that is provided in the court hearings once the petition is filed. So all the court representation that happens and all the preparation that happens along that. The bigger vision of CareCourt is to provide like wraparound services, but we're not counting like the wraparound services in this cost projection. We have said to the community that though that is important, we might want to advocate for that, but separately, because it was just too hard for us to find an estimate for the wraparound services. So we're really trying to keep it contained to just kind of CareCourt proceedings and anything related to those proceedings.
You know how much the budget is for I'm going to use the word prosecutor. I'm not sure if that's the right term, but do you know how much they're like, because there's like a government side, right, that wants to like rehabilitate. Is that the diplomatic word? Folks.
It's supposed to be like a diversion kind of like strategy. But yeah, no, we've asked for figures from, I think it was that call, Chris, that we asked, can you share the figure that public defenders is projecting or the courts and also like the county? And I don't know if people don't have the number yet, but maybe everybody's working on it. And so we don't have a sense right now what other kind of stakeholders are asking for.
I think a huge challenge for the community, and we're going to be in some ways asked to be a voice for the community, is that there are sort of traditional adversarial roles that legal services is playing, whether it's even in a situation where you're actually operating to get somebody benefits or you're trying to help somebody navigate. And these are like the CareCourt sort of by definition upends some of those traditional adversarial lines. And I think maybe the community is struggling about where to see those lines and how those lines might be redrawn. And so, and then of course, we don't want anything that's in our sort of current ambit to be compromised by participation in the CareCourt. So anyway, there's a lot of opportunities ahead. Selena,
I'm happy to wait on stack if other commissioners have comments.
I mean, the only thing I was going to say is I think I need to get better educated about it, because my understanding was I'm not, and maybe this is the problem with this hasn't actually been outlined, but I don't understand how it's going to work. And I understand the goal, I think, but to your point about the adversarial, that's my default. And so I'm not totally sure like what role everyone's supposed to be playing here.
Well, so yeah, but just to be clear, like, so they don't either.
Yeah, that's exactly, that may be the answer.
Yes.
Is no one knows.
Yeah, right. But like, to me, like the thing that I'm protective of is I want to make sure that they are really clear on what role the commission can play.
Right.
Because I don't want us to get pulled, into some area that we either can't execute on, shouldn't execute on, don't want to execute on, whatever
Right.
the thing is. So I'm very mindful, like we've got to be at the table to sort of be clear about what we can do as a commission. I mean, I would say they weren't so clear on sort of what we do.
Yeah.
As a general matter. Yeah.
Sorry,
feel
Selena,
free.
before we get, my initial thought on this was I think, putting together a committee of, the diverse group that we have, judges and others within the commission to kind of have this, well-rounded group of people who can weigh in on this, and provide. I'm kind of leaning a little bit now away from that because I feel like it might be a little bit premature, right? If it's not yet, and this is just completely off the top of my head right now, but if we're not sure what direction this is headed, what role we will or should have, what this will look like, it seems like my thought right now is maybe this is a situation where we are really, Chris, you and maybe we as an XCOM maintain the kind of current level of involvement to kind of guide it into the place where or see where this ends up and be a part of kind of navigating this process a little bit to get to a point where we know like what a committee would do or would be doing. I know that obviously there's administration of funding and kind of that the competitive grant process, but I don't know, it seems like maybe that this is something where it's still so amorphous and so kind of and part of my concern, and this is the other part of it, part of my concern is that if we were to bring together a group of commissioners, which I think I'd have all the trust in the world on having any of the commissioners involved with something where there's so little definition already. I think we want to be careful maybe of having a number of different potentially differing opinions about how this should go rather than having kind of one voice from the commission. I don't know, maybe that seems a little narrow, but it just feels like this could get really chaotic is my concern.
Let me ask you a question. I mean, because I'm envisioning a committee of the commission could actually take the step of recommending, like, we need to be out. And so, I'm sort of maintaining that as a possibility. But I don't think we might, so I'm wondering what your thinking is about that possibility. What I'm worried about is not having a presence ends up getting us into more trouble than having a presence. And I guess I'm wondering if you share that concern.
My thought is I think we have to be there and involved in the process. Question is just how we do that. I think, I don't know that I don't think there's one necessarily a right answer to this, but I think my concern is, I'm just sort of envisioning like we're having like these meetings are happening, right? There's HHS has somebody there, there's all these different sort of folks that are there. And we don't even know what those will look like, but are we expecting, my view would be the more, if we were to have a committee, I think we'd want everybody on the committee to be involved in those meetings to have kind of the real-time sense of what's going on. But what is the, or the committee, I guess, can designate, one person to be the kind of liaison, but what's our pitch to this? I don't know, I'm still kind of like,
Me
in the
too.
clouds on all this. I think we all are, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess maybe what we could do is, I sort of, I worry a little bit about, I think the three of us get along and are somewhat aligned on our views, but I also don't know that everyone on the commission is aligned with our views. And so us keeping it may create some ruffled feathers. So I think would see something where there's a committee of 2 or 3 people, small, nimble, can go different places. Hopefully one of us, sounds like Chris has volunteered, would be on it and could help report back. And then we have a sense of like the policy positions on and what's happening there. And then, 2 other people who we think can have the experience on policy or data or whatever, Dewan thinks is really essential there. But I don't think we make it very big, and we just kind of have people who at least one person or 2 people we know, we know we are comfortable with their positioning, I know that sounds very dictatorial, so I don't mean to be.
But I think what you're trying to say
saying that in a totally, undemocratic way, but
maybe
we're somewhat
somebody who's got a
stewards
sense
of
what our
yeah.
role is, right? Of what
exactly.
Yeah.
Be good stewards of the commission. It would be good for us to have a voice in this large thing. Dawn, how does that feel for you? And then if it gets bigger, we could always expand the committee later, right? We could always say, okay, and now it's a pain in the ass. It's a huge grant thing. Let's get more people to do more, to share more of it. But at the beginning, having just maybe 2 or 3 people, who can kind of share it and are fairly engaged.
Oh, I mean, that sounds great. And the ambiguity has been hard I think for me and the staff side too. And that's why I've just, for the staff's sake, I've decided, let me just take this on for now. But I think I'm going to have to hire probably a senior program analyst. And then one of our program supervisors is probably going to have to come along and help, because I don't have the time that I've been dedicating to this the last month. But I share you because it's been hard for me to describe also to the staff what are all the roles and responsibilities, because it's not like the grants administration where I could say, here's a timeline modeled off of this.
Right.
This is what you expect. This is not like this, because it's not just about this working group that HSS is there's a lot of other coordination, right? At some point, I think we need to talk to the public defender's office. At another point, we're going to have to talk to each of these counties, maybe that's collectively. So there's going to have to be a lot of creativity and going out and coordinating. And it feels there's not a playbook that we have with the grants administration. So I think for the committee, if you all can express that when we're recruiting, that we don't have kind of all the answers laid out, because for each of the other respective committees, there is a very clear define of what the role is, the timeline, the meeting schedule. This one we're just have to be a little bit more flexible. We're building the process, as we go.
And also, to your point about having a seat at the table, I'd rather us be there to know what legislation, because there's going to be follow-on legislation to all this, and that it could get taken out of our hands whether we play a role or not, and what that role is. So having some advocacy there would be, I think, good.
I mean, Selena, I'm gonna go ahead, and then I'll
Well, I just had more.
Sorry.
I had more questions for you all. So one of the issues I think that this committee needs to kind of puzzle through is that these are not pilot projects. This is the first wave, and that very soon this will be a statewide program. And so it's very possible the commission will then be in the business of distributing whatever, $100 million a year for these services. And as Dwan said, it's I think a lot of counties, the legal aid program will opt out. And so what does that mean for this commission making policy decisions on how you want to see the funds spent by legal aid, and in counties where legal aid may not be the provider of services? So that to me is problem number one that y'all will have to figure out. Another one is, which is opportunity, and a question is how much Felix, please, how much substantive expertise do you want on the commission? Because you could have an academic come and advise you as a consultant, or you could start recruiting for your next round of commission appointments and start looking for the people who have the skills that you would like to see on this committee in 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years. Because there are, mental health advocates who don't work in legal aid who might be a great addition to talk about like what is measurable and what's reasonable. And there may be academics who maybe at some of our, law school institutions, either like Jim on statistics and data and methodology, or on mental health issues. So that's something that, because recruiting takes a long time, y'all could start thinking through who you want on this body in the future. And yeah, that was basically it. I think this is just going to be a really interesting conundrum, and I'm grateful that you are taking it so seriously, even though we still don't know what we're responding to.
Well, so a couple other things maybe did offer a little color from that meeting. So when we met with the governor's office, I think they knew about us. Let me put it that way. And they sort of broadly were like, well, this is, this organization that we've heard of that has a good reputation as a steward of money and has deep ties into the legal services community, where we envision these services are going to sort of be delivered. So I think that is sort of maybe the beginning and the end of how much this had been thought through in terms of using the commission. So, I mean, to Selena's point, the concern that I have is that, the commission is engaged in a relationship with the legal services community that's providing legal services. And the commission is engaged in determining eligibility of those organizations, and then in competitive grant making associated with these various pots of money that have come in larger and larger numbers. But to Selena's point, if this is like a brand new portfolio that's going to be ongoing and being very significant, let's say $100 million being given out to, I'm going to use a broader term, just organizations, then we're sort of outside the traditional bailiwick of the commission. Like, for example, if the legal services community is just part of who gets CareCourt money in the future, then the commission is sort of straddling two worlds. Yes, it's giving out money to a traditional constituency, but is it also going to be tasked with giving out money to new constituencies that, are not really part of the legal services community, but is working in conjunction with the legal services community, maybe as a sub-grantee, maybe to offer services that are not legal in nature at all. So, I have all kinds of concerns of where the commission is positioned in this sort of policy decision-making because of these sort of unknowns at the moment. Like Amin said, I'm not sure there's a right answer about how to do this. I guess I just feel like at a minimum, we've got to be kept abreast of what is being considered so that we can, if necessary, say, no, we can't do that, won't do that, don't want to do that, would be bad at that. Or, we can influence, or we can say, yes, we do have that expertise, we can step into that role. This is what we'd need in order to do that. Because many details are left out, including, for example, the cost of grant administration that was addressed in that meeting. That meeting was like, oh, of course you can spend some money on grant administration. It's like, okay, thanks for letting us know. That it wasn't sort of self-evident to anybody on our end. So, maybe we're at a little bit of a decision point here. I'm mindful that maybe a little bit more information as it unfolds would be helpful before the executive committee makes a recommendation to the full commission, So if it's okay with you, Dwan, I think there's agreement that we should push the planning grant process out the door through staff. And correct me, Erica and Amin, if you disagree with that. That's like a helpful first step that we can kind of just be done with. I'll commit to sort of an ongoing monitoring of the process as a liaison with some help from Erica and Amin as needed for future meetings. And then why don't we revisit this in the January timeframe as an executive committee to see if we need to establish a formal full committee of the commission at the, I guess it would be at the March meeting, or
Yeah, March, but March might be a little bit too late because if they're gonna have a Q1 meeting, HHS, I don't know when in Q1, but that commission meeting is towards the end of March or the middle of March. I can't remember right now. I had it up a minute ago. The timing might not, and there might be a lot of things in between there.
well, but wouldn't it be the case that there'd be no action for the commission to take in Q1, or might there be?
There's no action, but you might want to have a committee up in case, like, to be involved in the process instead of waiting till March. Because if you wait till March, I mean, that doesn't leave, that's 7 months until October, right? I think a lot of things are going to happen in January and February just because the time frame is so tight.
So your recommendation is that we actually establish a committee of the commission in the November meeting?
I think if that's the direction you're going in, then I think that would be helpful to have a committee before that, before the January, before the new year.
I think the concern, though, that I'm hearing from Amin and Erica is that we really don't know enough to do that.
Okay.
Can we just keep it at exec for now?
Yeah.
Like, could we have us just be the committee for the short term and sort of tell the commission, like, we plan to establish this in March, but in the interim, there's a lot of stuff going on. And so do you think that would be?
Yeah. And
does that sort of sound okay with you? Like, cause then
I
it's
guess
just the three of us.
Yeah, if you don't mind. I mean, this has been like kind of de facto liaison. Like, I've spoken to him about this a few times. I'll probably need to call on you here and there. Yeah, if you don't mind playing that role, Chris.
Yeah, I'm happy to play the role. I mean, to Selena's broader point about, shaping the commission, like, I think everything she said is right, although it's very difficult to even take into account some of these considerations without a real, without more clarity about what we'd even be weighing. And I just mind, I'm terming out. So like my role here is time limited to some extent in any event. So anyway, okay. So then maybe we have resolved to maintain the executive committee's role in monitoring this, which might become fairly active in the January timeframe, January, February. And then if it becomes necessary to establish a full committee of the commission, we would be prepared to do that as, in the March meeting.
Okay.
Depending on how things unfold.
So, Dwan, on that, do you need the commission to like delegate authority to us so that we can make decisions for you in January and February? Is that what you need?
You're not making decisions. I guess there's not like an action item, right? It's to be engaged with the process. Okay,
that's what I'm asking. You don't expect there to be decisions in January, February. You just want
people. I
don't
expect, but it's one of those things. It's been hard to anticipate, like everything that's evolving.
Well, you know what?
This is a way
this is a way to slow it down, right? Because if they want to force us, we can just be like, we're gonna have to wait till March. You know what I mean? And we can kind of tee things up. You're like, no, that's not the.
Well, I'll give you an example where my head is on this. Is if, for example, the care court says, in these 7 counties,
Mhm.
you know, we have limited participation from the legal services community to deliver these services. So we've got to open up the, you know, the funding to additional organizations with whom we have no relationship. And now processes have to be established, you know, and created to us, you know, to determine whether or not organization A, B, or C should get funding. I mean, that might lie well outside of, you know, our current subject matter expertise. You know, if it's, for example, like a counseling service asking for a bunch of money.
Right.
I mean, that's not legal services. That's not what the commission does. You know, I don't, that's what I'm concerned about. I don't want to be saddled with like those kinds of forays without a lot of consideration.
So that makes sense to me, but I guess as a just a sort of pragmatic matter is just, does that mean like, I guess all I'm trying to kind of establish is if we're going to keep it with us, do we need to have the commission vote on anything to like empower us? Or, and Dawn, would that be safer so that if there are decision points, we can make them as we go? Or do you think not really, we can just, all of it will be sort of preparatory. And so then in March, it's just a matter of presenting it and hopefully the commission will be persuaded by whatever we have worked on in the interim.
My personal, I don't know if this is going to be right, but I think it's all preparatory. Because
Okay.
if there was, in fact, what Chris just laid out, I imagine you would go back to the full commission, right? That's a big substantive change.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't empower, like, yeah, we're not empowering. I don't think you're asking to empower like the executive committee to make that type of decision.
No.
So I think it's all preparatory.
Perfect. Okay. So then basically what we can just do is update the commission, say, we're going to keep monitoring it depending on sort of what comes out in January and February. We'll make a recommendation in March about whether there should be a further committee, and we'll do whatever preparation is necessary to empower that committee effectively.
Yeah.
Does that sound like the right? Great.
And I mean, and the thing is like, so we have the set meetings, which we just talked about for the commission, but if something really like dramatic happened, we just can just notice and have a commission meeting, right? In like January, February. We don't want to do that. And I don't think we're going to need to, but we always, we're not beholden to just that meeting schedule.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Sorry, I just wanted to kind of get a very, like, I just had a sort of pragmatic question on it. So it sounds like we're all on the same page, I hope. Okay.
All right. Stay tuned. All right, next on the list is our consumer debt grants.
And Danielle's going to provide a really update on that review process right now.
Sure. Yeah. So this will be quick, but just wanted to give you an update that we received 30 applications for funding. Those came from 26 QLSPs and 4 support centers. Of those 30, 25% said they were serving rural communities to some extent. You may recall that was a row of the scoring rubric, and another row of the scoring rubric related to serving underserved communities. And all 30 said that they would serve an underserved community of some sort. And those 30 applications together are requesting 21.4 million total, and we have about 14.25 million to distribute. So it will be a competitive process, which we like to see. And then the scoring team is 2 staff members, myself and program analyst Michael Chong, and 2 commissioners, Erica and Catherine Blakemore. We've held 2 scoring sessions thus far, and those have been going really well and having very productive conversation. We've gotten through 11 or 12 of the proposals, and we have several more scoring sessions scheduled to get through the rest of them to come to those calibrated scores that we'll present to you all later this month. There was one quick question that I wanted to get your kind of informal thoughts or feedback on related to supplantation. So the statute or the budget language for this grant, as with many of our other grants, says that these grants must be used, or these funds received will not be used to supplant existing resources. And conceptually, what that has meant is they need to use these grants to provide services they wouldn't otherwise be providing. So either like a brand new set of services, expanding existing services to new clients, new counties, hiring more staff, or the one that's become a little tricky for us is continuing existing work that would otherwise be forced to end because of lack of funding. And on its face, that seems pretty clear, but in some of the proposals we've looked at, it's gotten a little harder to distinguish what that might mean than maybe on its face it seems. For example, we've had at least 1 or 2 proposals so far that are like currently using EAF money to do some consumer debt work. And that EAF work is, or that EAF money is a 1-year grant. It does technically end December 2022. They could use that EAF money in 2023 to do consumer debt, or they could not. But it's kind of up to the grantees to tell us. I guess we're running into a question of like, does that become a supplantation issue if they're using EAF money that does technically end in December 2022, even though they could, in theory, probably use EAF for consumer debt again, but they made different choices with their funding. And similarly, I saw Selena has her hand up, so she probably has thoughts on this. And the other one that came up that was similar was their proposals, at least one proposal so far, that they're using general operating dollars, so it's not dedicated funding. They're just using unrestricted funds to do their consumer debt work. And would them using our consumer debt grant, if they were to receive it to do that work, count as supplantation as well? Can they kind of move that general funding? I see Selena has her hand up.
Well, I have strong opinions on this, which the commission can take it or leave it. Because I'm the one who like magically, that this is one of the sticky messages we had this year. Worked with Ted Merman and many other folks, Lee Farron, to make sure that legislators understood that there was a real need for consumer debt legal services. And we can do statutory interpretation, we can talk about legislative intent, but the purpose behind this funding is to increase services. And so that is like, I hope that at least programs are getting that, like the goal was to increase services because the need will be huge. And just moving money around doesn't increase services. And I'm usually the one who's asking the legislature to remove no supplantation language, because I think it's hard for organizations to plan around that. But this is one time where I did not, because I want to see an increase in services. So we can go back to legislature and show how important it was and what a difference it made in people's lives. So anyway, that is my strong feelings, which is not at all dispository, but is at least the reason why we fought for this money.
Yeah, I see.
Juan, sorry. Yeah.
No, it's okay. I just wasn't sure. I was like, I don't know if I should be calling on folks.
It's like my box here is different than your boxes.
So the general funds one is a little bit harder. The EF, though, I do have a strong opinion in that technically it's a new grant, but not really. I mean, they have programs know that they can rely on a certain base. We told them it's not. So to me, that's supplantation pretty clearly. The general funds one is a harder question, I think, but that's just my take.
Yeah, so I'll just kind of follow up on this since I am also working on this with Danielle. And I think what we've seen in a couple of, and I think where there's some concern is like, if there are organizations who already recognized that there was this significant need and had dedicated some funding to it and are representing that they're not going to like kill that, you know, program if we don't give them the funding because they think there's an important need, like, do we not give them the money, you know? And I totally take your point, Selena, like the whole point is to expand it, but like, can they take those general funds and then move it somewhere else? Like, I think there is this you know, there is what the legislature said, and if the legislature said that's supplantation, it's supplantation, but it is something worth us thinking about, is just when there's organizations that are already doing this, you know, and now we're not gonna like give them money so that they can kind of like diversify or, you know, have other things. I don't know. That was just, I think, some of the concern. But I think what we would like at some point is, and you know, just to keep it clear, is just making it maybe very clear on the applications. Like, here are the 3 categories of which supplantation qualifies. Like
I thought
the
we
programs.
did. Like, this is how you can show that it's not being.
So our kind of internal framework, if you will, and I think the HP Funds Committee has maybe made this more explicit, is that it needs to not be supplantation. It needs to be a new batch of services, like a new program altogether, an expansion of existing services, or a continuation of current services that would otherwise be forced to end because of a lack of funding. And that's kind of what they've drawn out as the 3 rules, if you will. And in the application, I can pull up the RFP and maybe see if we gave it more language, but I don't know that we explained or talked a lot in the RFP about supplantation. The question in the application asks, is the project currently operating under other funding sources, including other state bar funding? And if they say yes, another question comes up that says, how will funds be leveraged to not supplant existing funds and to provide services to individuals who the organization would otherwise be unable to serve?
And I think what we've gotten is, you know, we've also gotten sort of well, we don't use a funding source. We're just doing this project, and now this will be our funding source. And we're sort of like, well, how do we deal with, like,
If you're doing
money,
it,
there was
something's
some
funding
money.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't, or maybe there wasn't, but I don't understand that. So I think there's not a lot of the applications, just to reassure everyone, are expansions, right? Growing, you know, increasing their services. So Selena, this isn't like all of them, but where there's some tension, I think, is there are some where we think their programs are very good, and they have some expertise, and they would sort of, you know, it's not so clear what they're going to add on, but they want to sort of reallocate some money, you know, and that I get the expansion part, and I think it is just clearly supplantation, but I also think, you know, it's hard for us because we think they're good programs and we like to encourage them. But they also didn't use the magic words, right? And that's the one thing we want to be a little careful about is, I think it's that last prong is like a program that would end if they didn't get the funding, like that becomes,
And it's
it can
hard.
become a little magic wordy, right?
Right.
We won't do this anymore.
Right.
Unless you give us the money.
And it's hard for us to verify, you know, maybe their EAF is going down in 2023. And so maybe they were not going to be able to fund consumer debt anymore with their EAF. And that was going to always be the case. Or they thought there's this consumer debt grant on the horizon. We could choose not to fund consumer debt with EAF anymore because, you know, this money is coming, which the spirit of that is supplantation, but you could craft that argument and proposal in a way that you may be able to make the case that, yeah, without the consumer debt funding, this project would no longer exist. And then you've kind of met that 3rd prong. And there's been a small handful, like Erica said, it's a vast majority, it's very clearly not supplantation, but there's been a couple where that question has been lingering for us.
Juan?
Can I ask? Yeah. So Erica, Danielle, do you both think it is supplantation or not? I guess I'm trying to read between what you're saying.
I personally think it is supplantation because the legislation says existing. It says, let me pull up the exact wording.
Yeah, I do think there is an agreement that it is supplantation.
Okay, because I think it is. Like, it's pretty clear to me. That's why I wasn't sure if you were trying to say it wasn't.
I think there are a couple of issues. One is we're just flagging that it can create weird incentives, and we wanted to like flag that. I think there's also some concern that maybe we should screen this really carefully before, because we ended up sort of reviewing some of these really carefully and scoring them and then being like, well, technically it's supplantation. And so, yeah, but I think we we mainly had this concern about sort of like when folks are like, well, we don't really have a funding source, but we're still doing it. And now we're going to use this as the funding source. Like, I don't know what to do with that. Because like what you're telling me you don't have funds, but you're providing the service, it clearly somehow is getting funded. So that's one that I've seen that I'm like, I don't know what to do with that.
Yeah. The Budget Act language says the QLSP or support center receiving funds must demonstrate that the funds received will not supplant existing resources. And that's all it says on supplantation. And so I think some scoring team members posed a reasonable question: does existing resources mean only dedicated resources, or does it also mean kind of general operating funds? And absent clarification, I would err on the more cautious end and say that it includes all funds, including general operating funds. But yeah, that provides or leads to some tricky incentives.
Well, and that's why I think like the general fund is a little bit trickier, but say it's EF or any other source of funding, like it's coded. Like I don't actually buy, I mean, and maybe, I don't know how you guys act it, but if it's already existence, we require fund accounting. So there is a cost code that's associated with those activities. And maybe there's a few of them, but the thing is it can track back to something.
Right. We're less worried about the EAF ones.
Yeah,
We're
okay.
more worried about the general funds or the like, no, we don't have like a dedicated, like we don't have funding for it. We just do it.
Because then it's like, what is paying for that attorney time
Right.
now then? You know, it's probably unrestricted funding, but I think in how they're interpreting that is we don't have consumer debt funding. You know, we're using this unrestricted funding, but that is
Right.
still existing funding.
And the budget says existing resources, not funding. So existing
Yeah.
resources suggests anything you're using to support a program that currently exists can't be replaced with this money. So I think we've been, my sense has been that's supplantation. I'm not sure that, you know, but I just flag that it can create. And I think, Selena, you know this, which is why you generally probably try to advocate for taking it out, right? Is you don't want to penalize organizations that are already doing good work and not let them get funding, right? But yeah, we just wanted to raise this as something that had come up in our committee or in our working group. So, but I think we understand, and the clarity you guys have provided is helpful.
I feel like Bonnie also had some really good clarity on this.
Mm.
Like when we first saw no supplantation language on like a
Okay.
very old HP grant, maybe. Because there was one new funding, I want to say it was HP2, maybe had no supplantation. It was the first time that organizations were really trying to like figure out that gray area.
Yeah.
And Dawn, I don't remember specifically, but I remember Bonnie just kept saying like, well, if another grant ends on December 31st, then this new grant would begin on January 1st. That's no supplantation because it's ending. But I recall that if it was general funds and that you couldn't really make the same argument.
Yeah.
But this was I think it was HP2, so it was a while back. But Bonnie I think they see no supplantation a lot more in judicial council side.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and I think we just also wanted
Is-
to raise this like third prong of like threatening to end it if you don't get the funds, and like that's something HP's using, and we didn't sort of make that overt with our group. So like, I'm not sure that we're quite, but I think that creates weird incentives. that can be problematic too. So this yeah.
Is there a decision point for the executive committee? Just curious.
No, I don't think we
Okay.
certainly don't need like a resolution or, just wanted to get your thoughts on if we were thinking about supplementation similarly to how you would think about supplementation, since the scoring team is kind of working for the executive committee, if you
Yeah.
will, in scoring these
Yeah.
proposals.
It's this committee that has the delegated authority to ultimately approve everything. So that's why we're sort of raising with you that our thinking is consistent with the executive committee's thinking on this. And if you guys thought it was inconsistent, then we would have a further conversation. But it sounds as if we're all pretty aligned on what's happening. And just wanted to raise, but it was a concern that had been floating around.
As a practical matter, is there any concern about, excluding those programs or those applications that are towing this line and not having enough quality applications to make up, like, is there a practical concern that this is going to create issues in terms of what's being funded and what's not?
I don't know that that's the concern, other than we think there may be some good organizations that have experience because they're currently doing it, but they haven't necessarily applied to expand it. And, but I'm not sure that we're then worried that then we're going to fund a bad organization or something like that. That's not the concern.
I think this is a competitive enough, we received enough proposals. The vast majority of them, it is a clear expansion or new services. So I don't think the small number of programs that this may kind of take out of the running, if you will impact the competitiveness of the process overall. I don't think that's a concern, at least not for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think that is an important consideration. It's oversubscribed pretty significantly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's good. We just wanted to make sure there wasn't any conflicting views, and we will move forward with the common understanding.
Awesome. Thanks for your efforts on this. Appreciate it. Okay, I think, Duan, do you have an agenda to share?
Yeah, I
screen
just
on?
want to show you the draft agenda for the November 16th commission meeting, just so you have a heads up. Let me share my screen. Is that too small on me? Can you see this, or should I make it larger? Is that size okay?
It's okay for me.
Okay. Okay, great. Okay, so I'll skip down here to administrative activities. So we're going to discuss the work plan for the commission. I'm sorry, this should be 2023. Just noticed that right now. The 2023 commission work plan. We'll go over the committee assignments, and everybody has received it and has consented, and so that's just showing everybody what it is, and I'll send it out beforehand and post it. The administrative calendar, which is our meetings that we spoke about, as well as the meetings for the respective committees. And then we're going to go into like substantive now. We're going to report on both the Leadership Bank program and IELTA revenue. And we're actually going to have a pretty hearty discussion because I don't know if everybody's been following, but the Federal Reserve has continued to raise interest rates pretty significantly and a lot more than what the State Bar staff had projected when we met in June. The Federal Reserve is meeting this week and as well as in December. We anticipate that at least one of those two meetings, if not both, there's going to be another rate increase. The staff is working on now what that would mean in terms of IELTA revenue for 2022 and 2023. So we'll preview that so that you all know what's going on the revenue side. We also want to talk about Leadership Bank program because one of the requests from the State Bar staff is that we have perhaps two commissioners that can form a working group to help us, because we would like to kind of revamp the Leadership Bank program and build out more of a communications plan related to the Leadership Bank program. And this came up largely because when Wells Fargo dropped out, we were like very reactionary to it. So we want to be kind of less reactionary, a little bit more proactive in how we can generate more revenue, and also thinking about is there a place within the Leadership Bank program to kind of weave in kind of principles of social responsibility and diversity and inclusion. I don't know, but that's something that maybe we can at least consider. But we would like to have a kind of a working group to help the staff. We have a lot of ideas. We need to kind of narrow it down and prioritize and then really execute it. And we're moving into kind of good revenue years. So this would be the time to do that. And part of it also that piece would be a state bar rule change. Right now, the commission sets the ECR, the established compliance rate, and I think it's at 68 basis point right now. That's purely set by the commission, but we should think about raising that rate and doing some research, looking at other states, because when we're in a declining revenue environment, it's then too fast for us to react to that. So we should look at that, because we know now interest rates going up, they will go down at some point in the next few years, and we'll be more prepared for that. So a lot to do there. And we don't feel strongly with the working group. So if you guys have thoughts about like a different way to go about doing that, a committee, maybe not a committee now that we're forming another committee. But I am curious to see if you have initial thoughts on kind of that staff recommendation of the working group.
Erica, I mean.
It makes sense to me.
Okay.
Yep,
And
makes
you
sense.
know, if you have, Erica, Chris, all three of you thoughts, but even if you don't have them now, but you have them that day, then you can just share them that day too. But do you have, what are your impressions?
No, it sounds right to me. I think working groups are probably easier to handle something like this, where things may come up, and having 10 days notice for a meeting is maybe more difficult to coordinate. I think we've got a few commission members now who've got some really good background and expertise that can contribute in a meaningful way. So I think that's a great idea.
Great. Okay.
Do
And
we,
then-
if we were to do that, would we do that at the meeting, or is that the idea? Or
Well, with the working groups, it's usually a staff led, so we can always ask volunteers, or people can, if there's no volunteers, then maybe I'll email out. And then if there's nobody, then I'll come back to the three of you to see if you have suggestions on how we want to move forward. But hopefully a couple people will just volunteer. Okay. Then I'll report on the care court funding, and I'm thinking maybe doing a short presentation, because not everybody has the benefit or has been following along like the three of you, just so that we're all kind of have the information at our fingertips, and then we can talk about the process, and then we'll ask about the planning grants like we just discussed, and then forming the ad hoc, the subcommittee in March. And then we will also want to report on what's happening with the law students' summer fellowships. And I just reminded Chris of this a few days ago, but Erica and Amin, I don't know if you remember, but that the PLL money, the Provisional Licensed Lawyer Award, that opt-in that went from $40 to $45, that $5 was used to fund PLLs. So that program the funding for that has sunsetted, but we advocated with the legislature through a working group of this, of the Trust Fund Commission, as well as some other outside stakeholders, to keep that $5 in statute, but to redirect it to fund law student summer fellowships at IOLTA granted organizations. So that got approved. It's in print. We're probably going to be getting between $800,000 or $900,000 worth of revenue every year, but we need to figure out kind of we got to develop the RFP for it, process, all that good stuff. Elizabeth in our office is going to take the lead in managing the fellowship program. And then when I talked to Chris about this a few days ago, he thinks that maybe this should be a formal subcommittee. So we're going to ask the commission to form a subcommittee to work on this.
I think it's, just to be clear, I think it's pretty light work in terms of, I don't think it's going to be policy decisions, but I think it's going to be, I don't think it's going to be, contentious. It's not like we're grappling with really difficult things. It's more like fun, frankly.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's right. It's more contained. It's more typical to what we do. It's a smaller grant portfolio. Elizabeth and Selena have been already working together to kind of figure out some policy recommendations. And Elizabeth has also been interfacing with change lawyers, which we're actually going to contract out so they can provide some mentorship for our fellows, because they actually run a law student summer fellowship, and we're going to be coordinating with them so that the questions that they ask on their application is similar to ours, so that it's not kind of redundant work for our grantees.
Yeah, Erica, then Selena.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. So just on these, is it the organizations that apply? And then do they present who their student candidate is, or do they just apply for the fellowship in like regardless, and then they have full discretion on who to pay?
Yeah, so we're figuring out all those logistics, and that we actually
okay.
had Brady do some research for us, and the recommendation is going to be to fund the organization. I think I have that right. Brady's on, he can correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Okay, I was just curious. Thank you. Sounds cool.
Of course, I was turned to something else, but I heard my name.
It's the summer law school fellowship. Remember, you did research, and we're gonna grant it directly to the program, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it says.
I think that's the most protective way. We also do summer fellowships for law students, and we also administer the Legal Services Funders Network's fellowships for postgraduate fellowships. LAC's their fiscal sponsor. And it is tough because getting everyone's W-9s for a 1099 is a real challenge. Even when you tell them you can't get it until you can't pay them until they give it to you. It is ridiculous how slow people are to respond to that. But there's also, we've had concerns where people drop out of the program, and then it's really hard to figure out what you do if someone drops out mid-summer. But Elizabeth and I are working on program design, and we already looked to see what law schools pay their summer fellows and how they pay, and whether or not it's whether or not it's reportable as taxable compensation. And we are about to survey organizations. Elizabeth and I really want to get a lay of the land of what organizations are currently paying their summer law students, whether they're fellows, whether they're employees, whether they get employee benefits, and all, whether they get a stipend, whether they get technology provided to them. So we have a lot of questions. That survey is going to go out maybe even tomorrow because it's almost done. But we are so excited about this, and there's a lot of energy from our community who are just excited to be able to pay their law students.
No, it's going to be a really great program. It's relative to kind of the other grants that we write. It's not large amount of funding, but when we did the math, even if you decide to like fund generously at like $10,000 per summer fellowship, we're going to be able to fund between 40 and 50 fellows. So it's a sizable amount. It's a meaningful amount, and we're also hoping to collect data because one of the recommendations why we decided to redirect the $5 towards this and not another initiative is from the Justice Gap study. There was it showed that creating that pipeline from summer fellowships could make a meaningful impact in terms of recruitment and retention eventually in the public interest sector. And so we're hoping to be able to track that at some point to keep this ongoing funding, or maybe to build on it. But it's been really like it's been very positively received across the board from various stakeholders. So we're excited about that. But you're right, Chris, it's going to be a fun project, I think. Okay. And
yeah.
then
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Nope. Oh, yeah.
Okay, I was going to say, yeah, so that's the summer fellowships. And then we're not, there's no action items for the HP4 competitive application because we have the December meeting where we're going to approve both the consumer and the HP4 grants. But that committee wanted to do just a short report on kind of what Danielle provided to you all today, but for HP4. And then the main action item for this this November meeting is to approve budget applications for the 2023 IELTS and EF budgets. And so far, the staff is almost, I want to say, almost complete or very close to it, and there hasn't been any substantive issue. And then partnership is going to propose a new scoring rubric for 2024. Rules committee will then talk about their 2023 work plan, and then we'll close out with liaison reports. So it might not take the full 4 hours, but we are going to have in person. I say that, but we've never not taken 4 hours.
Yeah.
But it will be in person, and there's like a lunch component at the beginning. So we might not start on the dot at noon.
Okay, sounds good.
So any other, did I miss anything? Is there any agenda items that you all want to add to this?
I guess the only thing that comes to my mind is that we have just an ongoing need for recruiting for commissioners. And then I don't know if there's just an item for sort of I just can't remember. I'm sorry if this is something I should remember, but is anybody going to be new for the first time in this meeting that we need to welcome? And
Gosh, why am I drawing a blank? I think
Because
I think all the new commissioners are the new slate is new in November, because last August was the last with everybody. And then we've had orientation, but this is the first one where it's like,
yeah, I
Isn't
think
there like
Xavier-
Manetta?
like Xavier is,
Yeah.
I did, and the new, and Judge,
Justice Rodriguez.
yeah,
Judge
Justice
James.
Rodriguez, yeah.
Yeah, this is the new slate. So what I can do, Chris, is if you're okay with it, maybe I add a chair's report.
Yes, and then I think we should just be prepared to just sort of, everybody should introduce themselves in some fashion.
So if I add a chair's report, then maybe you can make a pitch for recruitment and retention, and then you can like kick it off
Yeah,
and
that's fine.
introduce people.
Yep.
We can do maybe a fun, something fun, icebreaker.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. That's good.
I mean, Erica, do you guys have anything else to add or modify? Okay.
No, the only thing I was gonna say is, are we in the care court funding part? Are we gonna talk about the exec's gonna keep an eye on it? That's the
Yeah.
only thing. Based on what
Yeah.
we talked
So what I
about.
can do is I can mock up really short PowerPoint, because I think the leadership bank program, that's going to be a heavy deck. That presentation is going to be long. And I can send it to the three of you with the motion about the planning grants piece. And then if it's too much information, too little, whatever you want to modify, just let me know.
And then this one, I think I committed to coming into San Francisco for it. So
Yeah,
if
if you're
anyone
still
else is in
available, it'd be great.
SF, I will see you all spending
Yeah.
the day in the city.
Oh, I'll be there. I'll be there.
I'll be there too. So there are about 4 or 5 commissioners coming in person in San Francisco, 4 or 5 in LA, and the rest is Zoom. And we're also going to be inviting the commissioners that just termed off, because we're able to do an in-person, and I don't know how many will come, but the invitation will be extended.
Does the bar require masks still?
No.
Just checking. I'm all vaccinated. I'm not
Yeah.
trying to be dangerous. I just wanted to
Yeah.
make sure.
No, so it's your comfort level, but yeah,
Okay, perfect. I'm excited.
great.
Yeah, me too. I'm happy to, to see people in person. There was a rebound of trick-or-treaters last night. Saw some cool costumes and some kids out and about. And
My
so-
unicorn costumes in the background here. I had to go trick or treating with my daughter, and we were both unicorns. And I promised the grant working group that I would share pictures.
I was gonna say, are you gonna show a picture?
Yeah.
I was gonna say, but doesn't the fact that
I know.
2 unicorns are together sort of defeat the unicorn nature of unicornness?
Well, see, the thing is, my daughter was a unicorn fairy princess, and so she needed her
Oh.
unicorn loyal servant.
Right. So it wasn't like a herd of unicorns.
Well,
It
there
was
were
more
other
like-
little girl unicorns, so
Oh.
we did sort of have. I don't know if you guys can see. Is it not really showing?
Oh, maybe you go
Oh, there
back.
we go.
Oh, there we
Yeah.
go. There we go.
Oh,
there we
Oh,
go.
nice.
Oh,
That looks
Yeah.
great.
oh, you guys are adorable. Oh, that's
Thank
so
you.
cute.
Good job. Good
She
job,
was very
Mom.
excited. Yeah, she was having a good time.
Amin, did
All
you
the,
have
all the
a
little
picture?
kids running around. How about
We-
you, Dawn? How was?
It was too much fun. That's why they're home right now.
Oh, I got mine out to school. I was like, you're going to bed at 8. You get 3 pieces of candy. I don't have time for you tomorrow.
Go on, can I stop recording?
Yes.
Yeah, well,
Good idea.
thanks,
Thanks,
Kim.
Kim.
So nice. Now everyone
go.
can see my picture. Oh,
Oh.